This video covers a recent blog post about vRealize automation certificate script to generate PEM files. As I've been working with VRA over the last several months, reading up blogs and watching YouTube videos and looking at documentation, one of the sections that is skimmed over is the certificates. This assumes that you have something internal already set up as a Microsoft CA, and my video here covers the scripts that I use to create the necessary files as you're going through the install wizard to apply the data that you need in those sections. So I don't cover the installation of it. There's plenty of material out there. I do reference Eric Shank's article here, as well as the VMware docs. Regarding the certificates, there's a couple things that you need. You need a PEM file that contains all the necessary certificates in one file, as well as a private key. In my case, I'm doing a medium install, which I will need one file for the appliances and then one for a set of Windows machines that's going to host the IaaS and the manager service. So I do use subject alternative names in the certificates, and we'll cover that, as well as I published the script in the XML file. The files are available on GitHub, and I did create a project out here called VRA-cert-script. It has the OpenSSL binaries, which are required for this, as well as the supporting files we'll go over. I've downloaded these already, but they are available. So we talked about the install, and I just want to briefly reference Eric's blog here. Thank you, Eric, for letting me use this. There's three sections. The vRealize appliance certificate. His example does show keep existing or generate certificate. In my case, I would choose import, and the script's going to create a PEM file which has the certificates and the RSA private key that you're going to paste in there. When you choose import, it's going to present two text boxes that you just paste the data, and I'll show you that. But after you do the vRealize appliance certificate, you'll come down here and you'll create the web certificate, and you'll do the same procedure. You'll paste the key, the private key, and the PEM file data. When you get down to the manager service, all you'll have to do is select the fingerprint from the previous one. So this is stuff that you will do ahead of time, and as part of the install documentation there's some worksheets that you have to cover. So as I mentioned, I had downloaded the files, so here's the OpenSSL binaries as well as that. So one of the things that I do is the OpenSSL and then the script is I put it at the root of the C drive. So in this case, you'll see that I've already placed OpenSSL and the binaries with the default install. And let's look at the scripts here. So before we proceed into the data, some things just to keep in mind, and I'm assuming you have a working internal certificate authority. If you're not sure, consult your directory services or your team that manages the certificate authority, maybe a security team. You'll have a template that'll issue a client and a certificate server authentication. OpenSSL has to be downloaded, and I put it in the root of C. One thing to note that I'm logged onto a Windows machine that's domain joined to the same domain as the certificate authority, the issuing server, and that's needed. Work with your directory service team to make sure that the account that you run as has the appropriate permissions. The script's pretty straightforward. It accepts one parameter, which is a config file. I like to externalize all of the data and not have too much hard coded. So there's a section here that reads in all the data. There's two functions, one to create the OpenSSL config file, as well as another function to do the certificate. The first one creates the CSR. The second one writes out the RSA private key. The third step here actually uses certrec to call the certificate authority and return a P7B file. The fourth step here creates a PEM file which extracts the P7B and all your certificate stuff into a single file, which you will use in the installation. And then this is the commands that run. as I mentioned, I'm doing a medium install, so I have a XML file per certificate. So the first one is for the appliances, so I have a file called vra-va.xml, and there's some properties that you saw in the script. The cert path you don't really need to worry about because the script will create the file. The other things you'll need to do is the subject alternative name, or this variable here, that allows you to have multiple different names on a single certificate. In my example, I use the friendly name vra-va-prod.ssl.local. That would be the friendly name if a person in my environment wanted to go to the portal. That's what they would use from their workstation or device. I have additional certificate attributes here. I have two appliances, vra1.ss.local, as well as the IP address in vra2. The only other thing I could think about adding in here would be the IP address of the virtual IP if you used something like F5, load balancer, or NSX. Generally, what I put in the common name is the most popular name that most people would reference that certificate by. You're only allowed one. So some of the other settings here, the OpenSSL config file, you don't have to worry about the file name, but these next few attributes you have to change: the country name, state of providence, locality name, which is usually your city, the organization name, and the organizational unit name. In the general variables, there's 3 to keep track of that you'll need to know ahead of time. The certificate template name, in this case, it's not very original, but it's called copy of web server by default. When I installed 2012 R2, there's a template out there called web server. I just made a copy of it for this demo. In the root CA, there's 2 pieces of information: the domain controller and the certificate authority name, as well as the password. So you'll get this information from your certificate authority administrator. The password, for this purposes, I just put it here. You could adjust the script to make a call out to your security store via a web service or whatever, but for this demo, I just put it here. One of the things that I learned was on the certificate authority server, there's an MMC that you would run, and it shows you the domain controller name. In this case, I installed certificate authority on a domain controller, and mine's called DC1, which is the one piece of information you need to know. And then here's the name. So if you're not sure, under certificate templates, here's a copy of web server. So nothing too impressive, but just to show you that that data is required before you are able to run it. Once you've saved all this in your XML file, we'll be able to run it from PowerShell. The only difference really in this one here would be the subject alternative name, the common name, and then you want to update the necessary information here. Because I'm doing a medium install, those 2 websites, the IS and the manager, are on the same set of servers, so I can use one certificate. So this is a little bit longer, but that's why. So you just have to know your DNS names, paste them in here, and they have to be formatted like DNS : because it does the script does dynamically create that the OpenSSL config file. So once you've got that all saved and published and put on the machine that you're logged in as the account that has permissions to do that, we can open up PowerShell here. So what we'll do is I've already typed out the commands, but when you run it, you're going to get a security warning. And because these scripts are from the internet, the default signing policy on Windows machines is restricted, so you can't actually run scripts. For my example, I made mine unrestricted, but if you have an internal signing script for your PowerShell scripts, you could change the machine policy to be remote signed or all signed. So in this case, it prompts me to run it, so I'm just going to run, and it's going to go through and create the file. I'll do the other one. It's going to prompt me again. I'll take an R for run. And when you're all done, what you'll see is under the OpenSSL, you're going to see a folder called certs, VRA certs, and there's 2 folders, one for your appliance and one for your IaaS web and your manager service. In here you have the open SSL config file that was created. Here's your P7B. The two files that you'll need for the install is the chain.pem and the key. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at those. So here's the private key. This is a testing environment for mine, so I don't really care. But just to show you, you just open it up, copy, paste, put it in the text box. Here's the chain. Here's the actual certificate, as well as the root certificate. If you had a intermediate, you would have a root, you'd have an intermediate, as well as the certificate. You just use this would be for your VRA, and then when you got to the step where you needed to do your IaaS and your web, just come over here, choose your chain, choose the key, paste the data in there, save it, and you will be able to use internal certificates with your install going through the wizard. I hope you found this to be useful. If you have any questions, feel free to post on the YouTube or contact me via my blog. Thank you and have a good day.